That's just
to the Rutgers Rundown podcast, episode 9. Nick Hart alongside my co-host Matthew Mangam. Matt, Rutgers basketball officially over here on the banks as Rutgers women's basketball fell in the WNIT, but some big news coming out of Rutgers men's basketball. We had some transfer portal stuff, and of course we're going to start today with a big announcement from Dylan Harper. He is officially declaring for the 2025 NBA draft.
Yeah, I mean, end of the season, he was asked what his plans were, and he was just like, I don't really know yet, still figuring it out, but obviously we all knew he's going to the NBA draft. I mean, if you're the projected number 2 pick, right now you can't skip up on that chance, and he's just too good to not be in the NBA. I know Ace Bailey will probably follow behind within the next couple of days, I assume. I mean, there's no reason why he wouldn't. So they're going to be the highest draft picks since James Bailey, who was a number 6 pick in the 1979 NBA draft, another Rutgers legend who was a part of that Final Four run in 1976. But yeah, Dylan Harper, number 2 pick, Ace Bailey, number 3. We'll see how that actually pans out. But I'm really looking forward to seeing them be drafted and seeing them in the NBA. It sends back to the thing that, yeah, the guys should have still been playing March basketball. Or they should have still been, the season should have been over yet, and they still should have been, going on, looking for more success. But hey, I'm happy for Dylan Harper, and he'll do great things in the NBA.
Yeah, and I think it was kind of a foregone conclusion when Harper and Bailey both came here that this would be a one-and-done type deal. Pretty much just making it official at this point was Harper. We assume that Ace Bailey is going to be soon to follow with his announcement. So that's 2 departures from the Rutgers men's basketball team. Talk about a couple other departures. 3 players so far this season. Well, 3 scholarship players have entered the transfer portal. Obviously, we know Peter Noble, the walk-on, was the first to enter. But Jordan Derkack, Lathan Sommerville, and Jeremiah Williams all hit the transfer portal. And I think Derkack was one that kind of made sense. It didn't seem like his style of play translated well into the Big Ten. Obviously, coming from Merrimack, coming from a mid-major, it was a much different conference that he played in. Jeremiah Williams, honestly, you can kind of see that was trending that way. I think the most surprising one, though, so far has been Lathan.
I disagree.
Really? I really thought that Lathan was somebody that was going to stay with this program and develop into a true big and be a dominant big in the Big Ten. I did not think he was going anywhere.
I actually think the most surprising one was Jordan Derkack. I think just because, I don't know, I felt like he wasn't really going to go anywhere else. I think he came back home. His brother Aiden's projected to come to Rutgers. Well, they're in the mix for Pikel and Cumber in the mix for getting his brother, who's also really talented, another Colonia. But I don't know. I just felt like Lathan, there were talks of it for most of the season. It just seemed like he was going to leave. I don't know. But Jeremiah also, I remember the Big Ten tournament, Steve Politi of NJ Advanced Media asked him about the portal, and he just said to Politi, don't ask me about the portal. That's what Jeremiah said. I think he already had his mind set up. He just didn't want to say anything right there. But Jeremiah Williams would be at his 4th school in his collegiate career. That's crazy to think about. And for Derkack, I don't know. I felt like he was going to stay here. I just had that feeling. But Lathan, I think, is one that was going to hurt the most because, yeah, his defense was really, really bad and really, really questionable. But he was a good scorer. Behind Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, he was the 3rd highest scorer in the team. And he was a good free throw shooter. So I think you're right. He could have developed into a big. I think it sucks that he's going, obviously. I think he'll go somewhere good and he'll be much better. He has a do not contact tag on his transfer portal. So I think he already has someone in mind, I think.
Well, for me personally, I think Derkack was among the interesting ones. I don't know if I would say surprising, but I think it was interesting because with Derkack, I don't see him going laterally with this move.
Exactly.
I don't see him going to a Big Ten school or an SEC school. I just don't think his play style is going to fit well there. I think the more realistic move for him is going to be maybe go to an ACC school, if anything. If not, honestly, I could see this move being a move downward back into a mid-major school like he started at.
That's where he thought his best, it seems like.
And that's kind of one of the reasons I thought that was an interesting move. But yeah, Rutgers already going to be without, well, they're already officially without 4 members of last season's roster. Presumably it's going to be 5 when Ace Bailey announces that he will be declaring for the draft as probably the number 3 pick.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what the transfer portal holds because I can honestly see a couple more players transferring off this
I
team.
agree.
And then you might have a situation like Indiana where you get to a point where there's nobody left on the roster.
That's insane.
But hopefully that's not the case for the men's basketball team. There's going to be a lot of work to be done in the transfer portal for Steve Peichel and company, and it's going to be a totally different look team. It's going to feature maybe 3 players, and like Dylan Grant and Bryce Dortch that were on last year's roster. But other than that, maybe J. Mike. I don't know.
I feel like he'll stick around.
I would like to see it. I think J. Mike had his moments with Rutgers. I think he could be a solid player. But for the most part, this is going to be a totally different team. You're going to assume Ogbole stays.
Yeah.
Even that, you still need to go out and get a big man. You have to have
100%.
a backup plan, because you saw it this year. Ogbole went down. Lathan, they kind of just said, well, if he has to play, he'll play. And we saw what happened. He was a solid scorer, but defense was not up to Big Ten standards.
Yeah, that was the problem with Rutgers, is they never really replaced Clifford Morey. Not really, they never did. That's a statement right there. And yeah, everyone's like, this was a great offensive team. They scored the most points they ever had under Peichel, but they also gave up so many points. I think they gave up like 78 points per game, which is, Peichel teams always average around 65, 66, that range. So the fact that they were giving up about 10 points more per game, it just felt like every game was a shootout. Like look at the games where there was like, they give up 90 points or they give up 80 plus points. That was very, very common for Rutgers this season. And in the past, they've won these gritty games, like when they beat Purdue. They've won these gritty games when they beat Ohio State or Indiana. And this year, that just wasn't seen. You could say, oh, I love to see the team score more points. It's more fun. You see nice dunks and everything, but also every game is going to be a shootout. So this was a team that wasn't like Peichel's roster. It wasn't a Peichel team, basically. It was something different. It was a far cry from what we're used to seeing. And next year, he can go back to his roots, I think, get some guys out of the portal. He has some more freshmen coming in that maybe are a bit better defensive-minded, and we'll see what he does. But next year's going to be a really, really telling year to see what he does with the roster, and we'll see who leaves again with the portal. I think there will be at least one more guy leaving. I'm not really sure who's going to be, though, but I feel like there'll be at least one more guy, maybe 2. I don't think 2, but we'll see.
Well, we'll keep it with the transfer portal. News coming from the Rutgers wrestling world that Dean Peterson would be transferring out for his final year of eligibility. And Matt, obviously not the beat writer, you would know better than I.
Yeah.
Was that a surprising move to you?
So I'll go through the little saga. Well, first I want to say also Brian Soldano also entered the portal, which is also kind of surprising for me because he had to take a right shirt this year because he got a concussion back in late December. So I was thinking next year he would come back, and obviously Shane Cartagena-Walsh, the redshirt freshman, took his spot at 184, but I was thinking maybe Soldano would be bumped up to 97 because Poznansky obviously retired from wrestling and he still had one more year left. So I was thinking there was a way you could still fit Soldano in the lineup. You put Soldano at 97, you put Shane at 184, you got both of them there back to back, but ultimately Soldano entered the portal, which is really unfortunate, I would say, because he was a great guy, great wrestler as well. Had a really solid breakout freshman season, but took a step back 2 seasons ago. This year, didn't really wrestle much, but good luck to him, obviously. But speaking at Peterson's level, there was a little interesting saga after his blood round loss at NCAA. So I should shout out to Frankie Palumbo because he actually was the one that noticed this. So after, I don't remember exactly when, but after his loss in the blood round, needed to win the match to become All-American, but he lost that match. So obviously 1 win away from All-American honors. He removed Rutgers wrestler from his bio on Twitter. It just said Dean Peterson, no Rutgers wrestler in it. Then it came back a couple of days later, and he posted some pictures of his NCAAs with the wrestling team, and I was like, okay, maybe he's gonna be back next year. I was really surprised that there was even a question. I feel like he was very loyal to this program, and then out of nowhere on Saturday night, his name is Pat Menino, is a wrestling report guy on Twitter, very close to Rutgers, posts a lot of New Jersey wrestling stuff, just posted that Dean Peterson's in the portal, and Peterson reposted it, so that's basically confirmed it, and then I posted something and Peterson reposted mine, so that also again confirmed it. Yeah, so I was honestly pretty surprised. After his loss in the blood round, he was kind of going online and criticizing his coaches a little bit for not calling a challenge on one of his takedowns. Is that the reason why he transferred? If that's the reason why, that's very silly. Just to have one reason. They're like, oh, this one match, I get it, big match, you win it, you're an All-American. But if that's the reason why you're leaving this program, because you're upset that the coaches didn't challenge one call, and that's why you're leaving this program, that's very shocking to me. That's kind of, I don't want to say immature, but a little bit come on. But if there's another reason, I don't know why, but yeah, so there's reports that he's going to Iowa already. There's reports that there was a tweet that said he was going to Iowa already from the same guy, Pat Menino. Then he deleted the tweet, but everyone saw it by then that he was saying that Iowa paid a bag for him. I wouldn't be surprised if they've been cashing in this portal. They already got, I think, 2 or 3 guys from Little Rock. But yeah, so Rutgers has a hole now in the line for 125 next year. They already have no one at 197, no one at heavyweight. So they got a few holes to address. But that Pearson loss, it's going to be tough. So I think next year, he'll really take a step up, even a bit greater next year. I could see him being an All-American again next year, or for the first time next season.
Well, it's one of those things that's kind of new still in college basketball.
Yeah.
is the transfer portal. Team's still trying to navigate it. Hopefully Rutgers is able to do some work on the transfer portal, because it seems like they're going to have to fill a lot of holes in that roster come the 2025-2026 season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they have some freshmen coming in again. They have some guys other well in the lineup that were redshirting this year. But yeah, definitely. It's going to be tough. I think on 125, you probably got to slot Aiden Smith in there. He was a very highly touted recruit this year, but he redshirted this year. Saw a few matches under his belt, but still developing. And I won't be surprised if next year Peterson's an All-American. I'm saying this now. I mean, he pinned Richie Figueroa, the reigning NCAA champ in Philly a couple weeks ago, and obviously that didn't come to anything. But we've seen what he's capable of. He beat Luke Lillidahl at JMA, and again, Luke Lillidahl was a Big Ten champion and had a really good NCAA. So, he's capable of pulling off these great wins. Just goes with consistency and everything. So next year, if he's a top 5 finish at NCAAs, I'm going to say to Rutgers, look, I told you so. Or I'm going to say to everybody, I told you so. I think it's clear to say that he has the potential. So his last year, unfortunately, will not be with Rutgers.
Well, we'll see what the season holds. Another season wrapping up for the Scarlet Knights. Move over to Rutgers women's basketball, who traveled out to Buffalo. I was there with my good pal, Will Carminati, and former Daily Targum writer, Alec Krauthamel. We took the trip up to Alumni Arena in Buffalo, New York, to watch the Great 8 matchup between the Bulls and the Scarlet Knights. Unfortunately for Rutgers, that is where their March season ended. They lost 71-64 to the Buffalo Bulls. And you can kind of tell that Rutgers was just out of energy. The gas ran out. That rotation of 6 players finally got caught up to them. Destiny Adams, JoJo Lacey, the only 2 players in double figures for the Scarlet Knights. Destiny Adams, 26 points, 13 rebounds, goes out with another double-double, her 18th of the season. JoJo Lacey with 16 points extended her streak to 3 straight games of double-figure points for Rutgers. But on the other side, you got to give credit where credit is due. This Buffalo team was very solid, Matt. Jalea Watson, 7 of 20 from the field, 28 points. Kirsten Lewis-Williams, 17 points on 4 of 9 shooting from the field and a perfect 9 of 9 from the free throw line. The Bulls shot 27 of 30 from the free throw line. In comparison, Rutgers shot 6 for 14.
Oh, man.
So, they got to the line more, and B, they took advantage of their chances. But Buffalo is a solid team. They're a quick team, and they're going to be a tough team going into the Fab Four and the finals if they make it in this WNIT.
Yeah, I was going to say, because these first 2 games of the WNIT, Rutgers looked really solid. And, I mean, I didn't watch the entire game, Nick, I'll be honest with you. I did watch I watched the entire first half, I will say. They were leading, and then it kind of all fell away in, the third and fourth quarter? Or the fourth quarters where Buffalo outscored Rutgers 29-19. So that's really where it all fell apart. Wow, they gave up 29 points in the fourth quarter. Wow.
And even more surprising than that was quite a bit of it was on free throws.
Yeah.
15 of 16 was Buffalo in the fourth quarter from the charity stripe. Shot 93%. And, yeah, you could kind of see it. Rutgers jumped out to an early lead. They were up 20-17 after 1. Then at halftime they had a lead, but then the third quarter, Rutgers' offense just went completely stagnant, only scored 11 points. And you had the loss that you were hoping didn't come and end the season, but ultimately it did. You lose to, again, a solid Buffalo team, one of the best teams in the MAC this year in women's basketball. And it just seemed like Rutgers didn't have that magic they had in the first 2 rounds. So.
Yeah, I think a big part of that was Maya Petticourt. I mean, she was really, really solid in the first 2 games of the WNIT, but on Sunday just had dropped a donut, Nick. I mean, 0 for 5 from 3-point range. Missed her only other shot from 2-point range. And I think against Charleston, she had like career high 6 3-pointers or something like that.
Yeah, and that was kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but it was something that you loved to see from Rutgers, but you knew it wasn't sustainable.
Yeah.
They had multiple players scoring in double figures in the past 2 games they had won, and you knew kind of a good defensive team was going to put a stop to that, and that's exactly what Buffalo did. They put a stop to pretty much every scorer outside of Destiny Adams. I mean, JoJo Lacey did have 16, but didn't really seem like she was a lethal scorer like she was in the previous game.
Yeah.
And Rutgers ultimately they fell flat. And you can't really expect a rotation of 6 players to be able to play every 2 days with, maybe 1 full rest day in between if you have a travel day?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if they flew or took a bus, but...
So they did fly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so per some of our good friends who are student managers, they did fly there because they got home well before we did last night.
I was going to say, that 6-hour bus ride, it would have been tough for them. It's not like you're driving over to College Park or you're driving to State College. It's like 3 hours. That's a long ride.
Well, I'll tell you what, Matt. It was such a long ride that we ended up right outside of Buffalo, or not, we were right in Buffalo, right outside of Canada, so close that we were able to actually walk across into Canada, which was cool, but really put into perspective how far north we were. But a great season. I wouldn't say a great season. An interesting season for Rutgers women's basketball. It was supposed to be a highly anticipated season. It was clouded by a lot of off-court incidents and drama. But, speaking with Coco East Washington after the game, she basically said, listen, recruiting season's all year long, so now that the season's over, we got to get in the transfer portal and try to fill the holes in our roster, especially with the 4 key seniors that they lose. But yeah, the end of that season, I think to wrap things up with that, you just say, hey, look, you played postseason. You didn't think you were going to, and you made a little bit of noise. But another team that's been making a lot of noise, Matt, has been this Rutgers women's lacrosse team. Some nice ranked wins. A win last time out against number 21 Ohio State. They're 2-1 in Big Ten play and 8-4 overall. I mean, just solid play to knock off one of the top teams in the country.
Yeah, and I remember sitting here and talking, I think after they, I don't even remember when, but early in the season, I remember saying...
Might have even been the Johns Hopkins game.
Yeah, well, I just remember sitting here and talking, I'm saying early in the season, like the very beginning. I remember saying, okay, look, they beat Monmouth, they beat Delaware, but they beat Lemoyne, but then I remember saying, okay, can this team handle the Big Ten? I know it's only 3 games, but so far that was pretty solid. I mean, I know the Johns Hopkins loss is a bad loss, but that's Johns Hopkins. But they beat Ohio State and Oregon, obviously, but I don't know. I have faith in this team. I think they're pretty solid, actually. And I remember another thing I kept bringing up was Cassie Spills is gone. Who's going to step up? And although Lily Dixon hasn't stepped up as much with the goal scoring, I mean, obviously, Spills had 74 goals last season. No one's ever going to reach that number. That just feels like she was playing this game on easy mode or something like that. But Lily Dixon, 45 points. She may not be scoring a lot, but she's assisting a ton. 29 assists. She, I think 2 games ago, reached her 100th career point, which was the 28th. She's going to have to do that in the program, and I'm sure she'll, continue to add to that number. She's still got 1 more year. She's only a junior. And another thing of this team is just the scoring is so spread out. You have Lily Dixon with 16 goals, Alexa Corbin with 16 goals, Delaney Sully with 16 goals, Peyton Tini with 15 goals. So every time there's a game going on, you don't know who's going to score. Everyone's going to chip in. That's what's really good with this team is that they're not depending on one scorer. You got a good defense, and of course, Alexi Koldar has been solid this season. And yeah, against Ohio State on Sunday, which was yesterday, they got a little scary. They had a really, really good first half, and in the third quarter, they were leading 8-1, Nick, and then Ohio State out of nowhere pulled it back to 8-7, scoring, just complete shutout Rutgers from there. But Rutgers in the fourth quarter did just enough to hold off Ohio State. They scored 4 straight goals to put the game to bed, give themselves some breathing room, and they won. And if you ask me, this team should be ranked. If you're beating Stony Brook and Ohio State, 2 teams that are in the top 20-ish of the lacrosse rankings, this team should be ranked, I think. Now they play Penn State on Thursday, a team that's kind of had an okay season so far. I think they could definitely win that game. That's definitely a winnable game on their schedule.
And I want to go back to your point, Matt, about goal scoring coming from everywhere. You look at the box score. Peyton Tini, 3 goals. Ava Chiarella, 2 goals. Delaney Sutley, 2 goals. Hillary Elsner, 2 goals. Lily Dixon, a goal. Alexa Corbin, a goal. Michelle Warren, a goal. So the goal scoring is coming from all over the place. The defense has been solid. And I have to agree with your point. I mean, you have 2 ranked wins on the season. You're playing in arguably the best division or conference in college lacrosse, at least. I mean, I think both men's and women's. So, I don't know. I think maybe if you see them rip off another 2 wins in a row, you could see them ranked. Granted, Northwestern's a very solid team. But I do think at some point this team should have a ranking next to their name if they continue to put up the numbers they have.
And I believe they actually had a ranking at one point. I don't think it was, like, I think it depends on the poll you look at, but I think after they beat Hofstra, if I'm correct, they had a ranking for something, but then they lost to Princeton, so they lost the ranking again. I mean, Princeton's obviously another really good team. But, yeah, look at the rest of the schedule. I mean, you have 3 home games. I feel like Penn State's kind of like, it's not really a home game, but you're not flying. So they're going to be on the East Coast for a while now until they go back to Ann Arbor to the last game of the season. So they have Penn State on Thursday, then they have Northwestern, USC, and Maryland all at home. And those are 3 tough games, of course. Northwestern and Maryland, some of the top lacrosse teams, and then USC, who's still ranked. I think they're 1-2 in Big Ten play there right now. So if you ask me, you got to beat Penn State, you got to beat USC at home. Those are 2 games you have to win. Northwestern and Maryland games are going to be tough in front of your home crowd still. But we'll see. I mean, this team could definitely, I think, if they when there's 2 games in, maybe beat Michigan and they make a little run in the tournament, they'll be in the national tournament, I think. There's no doubt about it. But we'll see. It's up to them. Cassie Spills comes back to town on Thursday, April 10th. She'll be back with USC. So they'll see Cassie Spills. I think she's an assistant coach at USC Women's Lacrosse. So they'll see her back, hoping to beat her this time to try to solidify their chances for the Big Ten tournament and national tournament. But yeah, they're really good season for them. I'm impressed with what I've seen from them.
Well, you move over now to men's lacrosse, which has kind of had the opposite season. Started off with the ranking after a nice win against Lehigh, and it all went downhill from there. You beat up on LIU, and then back-to-back losses to Stony Brook and Army, and now Rutgers men's lacrosse sits at 5-6 overall, 1-1 in conference play, with an absolute gauntlet of a schedule remaining. They're home on Saturday against number 2 Maryland, then home again for number 13 Michigan, and then back on the road to round out the season against number 10 Penn State. But last time out was a promising sign. You lost 13-11 to the number 3 ranked team in the country, Ohio State, and you probably could have came away with a win again in that game.
Yeah, I mean, I was at work on Saturday, but I remember I was curious about the score, so I remember checking the Twitter constantly. I was like, wow, it's a really close game. And the entire game was really close, Nick. Penn State. Ohio State jumped out to a 3-0 lead. Rutgers tied it back up, and then Ohio State took the lead again. So Rutgers was never in front. They always were playing catch-up. But the entire game, they were always within a goal. They were always within 2 goals. They wouldn't go away. And then at one point in the 4th quarter, Nick, right at the beginning, Colin Cordell scored. They trailed 10-9. They were right there. But then Ohio State scored 2 straight goals to make it 12-9. And then from then, Rutgers scored, but Ohio State scored again. So it was just Rutgers couldn't finally get over the hump, but they were right there the entire game. So it's very promising. And I mean, you could say, oh, they played well, but at the end of the day, the committee doesn't care if you win. If you lost, you lost. That's it. You're done. But yeah, if they would have beat Ohio State, they would have had Johns Hopkins and Ohio State back-to-back wins. I think they would have been ranked.
I mean, you beat the number 11 team and the number 3 team in the country. You almost think you have to, but I think it's a good sign. I mean, you beat a really good team in Johns Hopkins, and then you played really well against an Ohio State team, which is one of the best in the country. Now you're going up against Maryland, who's the number 2 ranked team in the country. If you're Rutgers, it's almost like you have to win out if you want to have any hope of trying to make to the tournament.
Well, I think Maryland's going to be really, really hard, obviously, to say, oh, they got to win this game. But you have to be Michigan and Penn State, I'd say, and then maybe get a win or 2 in the Big Ten tournament, and then you'll probably go to the national tournament. But we'll see. I mean, it's weird because I feel like the team is playing the best they have all season still. Because you look at that, there was that stretch where they lost to, they lost to St. Joe's and Princeton. That stretch right there, and then obviously the Stony Brook and Army stretch were really, really tough for this team. And then there were so many times this season where you felt like this team, oh, their season's over. But they've kind of been like, we're back. And after the Johns Hopkins win, you were like, oh, they're back. And they lost to Ohio State. And yeah, they're 5-6, but who knows? Maybe they could finish with 2 more wins under their belt, and we'll see. I don't know. This team is really hard to predict what we're going to see. You see the team that beat Loyola. You see the team that beat Lehigh, you see the team that beat Johns Hopkins. You see the team that loses to St. Joe's. So you never know what you're going to get with this team.
Yeah, it's been a very up and down season, but got to tighten things up for the final few games of the conference play and of the season. I mean, we talk about it all the time, how quick this schedule goes, and I mean, that has held so true this season. It feels like just yesterday that Rutgers was kicking things off with you and I on the call against LIU.
Yeah, I know, right?
At SHI Stadium, and now we're sitting here talking about, well, the season's almost over. But we'll move on now, go over to Rutgers softball real quick. Not much to talk about, as the number 6 ranked team in the country, the Oregon Ducks, came to town and took care of business, putting up 41 runs in a 2-game stretch against Rutgers, and Rutgers only putting up 3. First game was a 20-1 loss, and the second game a 21-2 loss. So I think we'll just leave that right there and not go too much into that, because it was not a great showing for Rutgers. Another team that kind of has been struggling throughout Big Ten play. Only 1 win against Maryland in conference play. So we'll see what continues to go on with them, but 41-3 being outscored in 2 games, not the best. But we'll go over quickly to baseball, who finally found itself on the winning end of a Big Ten series. They took down Washington 2-1 after dropping the opening game of the series 3-1 on Friday. They came back to win 13-4 and 6-3 on Saturday and Sunday. And this is a team that is kind of starting to come into their own a little bit. One concern I do have with this Rutgers baseball team is the consistency at the plate. Trevor Cohen, the only qualified hitter batting over 300. He's batting 348. Then you have Ty Doucette at 286 and Peyton Bonds at 269. The consistency's not there.
No, definitely not. And I mean, I remember talking about this again earlier in the season. We're just going to say, who's going to be the guy? And we've seen Trevor Cohen, but like you said, it's just kind of like, again, what team are you going to get? The team that puts up crazy runs, the team that doesn't get anything going. So this weekend, obviously we saw the one when they won 13-4. That was the Rutgers, hitting that we know and love. And then we had to the game where they lost 3-1. And then the last game they won, obviously close one 6-3, but they had the pitching behind them. So it's just going to go down to the hitting. I think the pitching, for the most part, the season has been pretty solid. The pitching's been pretty good. You can't really complain.
Well, Landon Mack has been excellent for Rutgers, especially in his last 2 outings. His outing against Oregon basically was a shutdown as it gets, earned him the Big Ten Pitcher of the Week.
Yeah.
He threw 7 innings of 2-hit ball with 4 strikeouts, no runs. And then against Washington, he pitched 6 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs, a walk, and 6 Ks, getting a victory in both of those appearances. But, yeah, the batting concerns me both from an average standpoint and a power standpoint. Rutgers has only blasted 12 homers this season, and 5 of them have come off the bat of Ty Doucette.
Yeah.
So it's been a slow start for these hitters. I mean, Trevor Cohen has 1 homer. You don't really see him as much of a power hitter, but a guy like Peyton Bonds, you saw him start the season early with a huge home run. Hasn't really done much since. It's only been slugging .337. Nick Tomasetto, 2 home runs, both coming in the same game. Matt Chattel with a homer in his the last non-conference game against Princeton. So I don't know. It just seems like the hitting hasn't been there all that much, but the pitching is finally starting to come around, which I think will benefit Rutgers more, because I feel like it's much easier to piece along the offense than it is try to piece together pitching. If you don't have good pitching, it's over.
Yeah. Well, I will say, though, their schedule, pretty good up and coming. Nebraska, they face this weekend in Lincoln, and Nebraska was ranked to start the season, Nick, but now they're 12-15 overall, 2-7 in Big Ten play. So look at the series for Rutgers. They could definitely win this series. And then Purdue, kind of same case. Obviously not the greatest as well either. They're also struggling as well. They're actually overall at 20-7, but in the Big Ten they're 3-6. So these 2 series on the road, Rutgers can try to maybe get a 2 series wins here. It would be pretty solid. And they obviously have the midweek games against Monmouth, Seton Hall, and Hofstra. Those are all, you have to win those games. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with this team.
So here's something interesting I want to bring to your attention before we wrap things up here. So as a team, overall, Rutgers is hitting .264 amongst all of their hitters that have had an at-bat. Conference play, they're batting .245, which neither is very good, but kind of alarming that conference play has been that much worse. And you look at the pitching, a 5.27 ERA against overall, and then against conference opponents, they have a 5.68. So it doesn't get that much different of a team, I feel like, when you go from conference to non-conference, but I think even that little of a dip in the batting average, especially when the team is struggling as much as they have been, is something that really needs to be worked on if you're the Rutgers team. Yeah,
I just looked. They have the third worst batting average in the Big Ten. So the worst actually is Washington. So they just beat them. So and then the second worst is Nebraska. So hey, maybe you can win that series then. But yeah, that's definitely I didn't realize that how poor it was. And then you're right. The pitching's been solid, but it really is the hitting. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if the guys can step up.
We shall. Well, Matt, the winter season sports are officially ending as far as games. There's no more games for the winter sports. Probably have a little bit more news as far as the transfer portal goes, both for men's and women's basketball and maybe even for wrestling. But spring sports are in full effect. We got Rutgers baseball, softball, men's and women's lacrosse. You got spring football coming up in a few weeks. And one thing that is coming up, so JMA is done this year as far as hosting events, except for one very special event, the annual WRSU versus the Daily Targum basketball game, which will be held at Jersey Mike's Arena on Wednesday, the 9th, I believe, with the game starting at 7:15. So for anyone listening, if you want to pull up to that, make sure you do. I don't believe you need a ticket for that, so come watch some bad basketball and try to watch the Daily Targum three-peat as we are the winners of the past two matchups. But
there you go.
It's all the time we have for today. I want to thank you guys so much for listening. As always, you can find us on YouTube at The Daily Targum and, of course, on thedailytargum.com. For Nick Hart, it's been fun, Matt, having you back. And, we'll see you guys next week for another episode of the Rutgers Rundown.